Two envelopes lay on the kitchen table at the house on Linden Avenue, each one sealed. Perry's name was on the first. Archer's name was on the second. Dinah stood in the doorway of the kitchen, where she had eaten breakfast every morning for the first 18 years of her life, and counted to make sure she hadn't missed one. She hadn't. Norman cleared his throat from his chair at the head of the table. "Sit down, Dinah. We're waiting on you." She sat. The lawyer, a man named Reg, who had drawn up Norman and Lorena's wills 20 years ago and apparently never retired, laid a folder open on the table. He explained that Norman and Lorena had decided to transfer their assets while they were still in good health and could make the decisions themselves. He used the word voluntary 3 times. He said it was a common arrangement. Perry, who was 42 and had worked at Hartwell's building supply since he was 16, received the store and the family house on Linden Avenue. He also received the storage lot behind the building where the lumber was kept. Reg explained that the house would remain available to Norman and Lorena as their primary residence for as long as they chose to use it. Archer, who was 34 and had spent the last decade doing residential construction, received the duplex on Maple Street and a vacant lot on the county road east of town. Reg noted that the lot had been recently assessed and that its value had increased considerably since Norman bought it in 2003. When Reg finished, Norman folded his hands on the table. "What about my share, Dad?" Dinah asked. The room went quiet the way rooms do, when everyone already knows the answer to the question being asked. Norman looked at her across the table. "You have your life in Ottawa. You have your shop. You have Alec and Fern. The property here should stay close, where it can be looked after properly. Your brothers are the ones who stayed." Lorena was looking at the tablecloth. Dinah kept her voice even. "I stayed for a long time, too." "That's not what I mean." His tone closed the subject. "This is what your mother and I decided. Reg has a document for you to sign just to confirm you were informed. That's all." The document was 2 pages. It stated that Dinah had been made aware of the transfers and that she had no claim to contest them. Her name did not appear beside any asset. She read it twice, picked up the pen Reg offered, and signed her name in full. As soon as she set the pen down, Norman said, "Now, your mother and I have been talking. We'd like to move to Ottawa in the next few weeks, to stay with you and Alec." Dinah put the pen on the table. "I'm sorry? We're getting older. Ottawa has better specialists. You're close to the hospital, and your hours at the shop are more flexible than your brother's schedules." "You just signed the house over to Perry," Dinah said. "Why can't you stay there?" Perry answered before Norman could. "Wendy and I need the space. Tyler and his girlfriend are trying to get on their feet, and the front bedroom makes the most sense for them. And I'm in the middle of renovations," Archer said. "The whole back half of my place is down to the studs. It's not safe." Lorena reached across the table and put her hand on Dinah's. "A mother is always more comfortable with her daughter. You know how it is." Dinah looked at the 2 envelopes still sitting in the middle of the table. 15 minutes ago, being married and living in Ottawa had been the reason she couldn't have a share of anything. Now it had nothing to do with anything at all. "Have you asked Alec about this?" "You 2 are married," Norman said. "If you agree, he'll agree." "That's not how our house works." Norman's expression shifted. "You're our child. You don't put a price on family." "I'm not putting a price on anything. I'm asking how this is supposed to work." Dinah looked at both brothers. "How much will each of you contribute every month toward their expenses? If Mom has a health crisis, who takes time off to be at the hospital?" Neither Perry nor Archer answered. That was when Dinah understood the shape of it. The property had been divided with precision: square footage, lot lines, assessed values, access roads. The responsibility of caring for Norman and Lorena had been left entirely undefined, on the assumption that Dinah would fill whatever space no one else claimed. "No," she said. Norman sat back. "No what?" "I won't take you and Mom in place of all 3 of us sharing the responsibility. If we're doing this together as a family, I'll do my part. But I'm not carrying your shares, too." Norman's voice rose. "After everything this family has done for you, after everything we gave up." Dinah looked at her father. "You gave my graphic design money to Perry when I was 20 years old. Do you remember that? I had saved $2,800 from 2 summers of waitressing to register at Algonquin. You used it to cover a shortfall at the store over Christmas. You told me girls didn't need their own businesses. You said I'd find good work somewhere." The room was very still. "I'm not bringing that up to take anything back," she said. I want everyone to understand that I got where I am because I worked for it, not because this family handed it to me. And now, because I have something, I'm supposed to take on everything for everyone." She stood, picked up her copy of the acknowledgement document, and folded it into her bag. "I will do my fair share. I'm asking Perry and Archer to do theirs." The drive back to Ottawa took 2 hours. Alec was waiting with dinner on the stove. When she told him what had happened, he was quiet for a long time before he said, "Maybe we should just take them in. It would make things easier." Dinah thought about the envelopes on the kitchen table. Easier for whom? Norman called twice in the following week. Both times he asked if she had reconsidered. Both times she said she was willing to share the responsibility equally among 4 children, and that she had a proposal. He ended both calls before she could explain what she meant. 3 weeks later, Gail, who had known Lorena since they were in the same church choir in 1987, called to say that Norman and Lorena had left the house on Linden Avenue. Tyler had moved into the front rooms with his girlfriend. Perry had told his parents the main floor needed to become a proper showroom for the new kitchen and bath fixtures the store was carrying. Norman had refused to move to the small room off the back hallway, the one with the window that faced the parking lot. But after 3 days of argument, he had run out of ground to stand on. The house was legally Perry's now. "They're at Archer's," Gail said. He put them in the spare room. The spare room at Archer's was the one not yet gutted. It had a bed and a space heater and a bathroom that required walking through a half-demolished kitchen. Archer was doing the renovation himself on weekends, which meant the noise started at 7 on Saturday mornings. Dinah called Lorena. Her mother answered on the 4th ring and said everything was fine. Behind her, Dinah could hear a circular saw. Lorena had a fall 6 weeks later. She had gotten up in the night to use the bathroom and caught her foot on the lip of plastic sheeting. Archer had laid over the hallway subfloor. Her wrist took most of the impact. By morning it was swollen and she couldn't close her hand. Gail was the one who called Dinah, because Norman had told everyone not to bother the kids over a small fall. Dinah drove to Brockville that afternoon. Lorena was sitting in the spare room with her arm propped on a pillow, looking tired. Norman was on the phone with Perry about a lumber delivery. Archer was at a job site. She sat beside her mother and read the labels on both prescription bottles. One had a refill available. She photographed both labels and texted them to herself. Before she left, she knocked on Archer's office doorframe. "The hallway needs to be safe for 2 people in their 70s to walk through at night. You need lights at floor level, and the plastic sheeting has to be taped flat or taken up entirely." Archer looked up from his laptop. "It's temporary. So is a broken wrist. Make it safe." She drove back to Ottawa and opened her notes app. She typed 4 names at the top of a blank page. Underneath each one, she left space for a dollar amount and a column of days. Lorena's blood pressure ran high through the fall. Her Brockville doctor changed the prescription and told her she needed consistent rest. By December, Norman and Lorena were in a rented room above a dry cleaning shop on the main street. Archer's renovation had expanded into the spare room when he decided to move a load-bearing wall, and his contractor had said the room couldn't be used until after the inspection. Norman hadn't told Dinah. Gail had called anyway. The room above the dry cleaner was small. A bed, 2 chairs, a bathroom with no tub, and a kitchenette that smelled faintly of cleaning solvent from below. The heat worked and the neighborhood was quiet, but Lorena had to hold the railing with both hands on the stairs, and the wrist that had healed wasn't entirely right. Dinah called Perry from the parking lot outside. She told him where their parents were living. She told him about the stairs and Lorena's blood pressure medication. "I know," Perry said. "Dad told me." "And? What do you want me to say, Dinah? My house is full. Archer has a situation. Things happen in between." "In between what?" He didn't have a good answer. She called Archer. He said he felt terrible. He said it was only a few more weeks. She asked him to be specific, and he said you couldn't be specific about construction timelines. She knew that. That night she sat at the kitchen table in Ottawa with Alec and a legal pad and worked through numbers. Monthly cost of a decent 1-bedroom apartment near Brockville General. The daily rate for a PSW, a personal support worker, for weekday mornings, medication, follow-up appointments. She divided everything 4 ways and looked at what each number meant. Alex sat across from her. "Is this going to work?" "It will if they all sign it," she said. Lorena's blood pressure spiked in January. She called Dinah 3 times from the room above the dry cleaner. When Dinah called back, Lorena said she felt strange. Not sick, exactly. Strange. One side of her face felt heavy. Dinah recognized the description. "Stay on the phone with me," she said, and called 911 in Brockville from her laptop at the same time. It was a TIA, a transient ischemic attack, what the neurologist at Brockville General called a warning stroke. By the time Dinah arrived, Lorena was stable and alert, but her speech was slightly slurred and her left hand had less grip than the right. Perry arrived an hour later. Archer came in the evening with Britt, who sat in the waiting area with her phone. Norman sat in the plastic chair beside Lorena's bed and looked smaller than Dinah had ever seen him look. When the attending physician came to speak with the family, it was Dinah who asked the questions. What were the next steps? What restrictions needed to be in place? What signs should the family watch for? Perry had his arms crossed. Archer was looking at the drop ceiling. When the doctor asked where Lorena would go on discharge, all three of them looked at the floor. Dinah opened her bag and took out 4 stapled sheets of paper. "What is this?" Archer said. "A schedule." Perry unfolded his copy. "Mom just had a stroke warning, and you brought paperwork to the hospital? The more serious it is, the more clearly it needs to be laid out." She smoothed her copy on her knee. "I found an apartment 2 blocks from the hospital, 1 bedroom, ground floor, no steps. I spoke with a PSW named Odette this morning. She works weekday mornings, 7 until 1. She's cared for stroke patients before, and she knows what recovery looks like." "You already arranged this?" "I arranged to look at it. Whether it happens depends on everyone in this room." The sheet was divided into 4 columns, her name and her brother's names across the top, and a grid of weeks down the page. Financial contributions, care days, appointment responsibilities, evening coverage for the hours after Odette left. Perry studied his column. "This is a lot to commit to." "Mom is in a hospital bed," Dinah said. "Pick a day." It took 40 minutes. Archer chose Tuesday and Thursday evenings and agreed to take Lorena to 2 appointments per month. Perry chose Sunday afternoons and offered a monthly financial contribution that was less than Dinah had calculated as fair. She wrote down the number he offered without argument. She wrote down exactly what each person said they would do, beside their name, in front of everyone. At one point, Norman said quietly that he hadn't imagined it would come to paperwork. When the property was transferred, Dinah said every square foot was documented, every lot line. "This isn't different." He pressed his lips together but said nothing else. All 4 siblings signed all 4 copies. Dinah photographed every page and sent them to the family group chat. Any changes required 48 hours notice and a confirmed replacement. She transferred her share of the first and last month's rent on the apartment that evening and sent the landlord the names of the 3 other people who would be paying their portions directly. Odette arrived the first Monday with a tote bag of her own supplies, a blood pressure cuff, a weekly pill organizer, a printed list of questions for Lorena's next appointment. She was matter-of-fact and warm, and she didn't speak to Norman and Lorena like they were fragile. Within a week, Lorena had started telling her about the garden she'd kept on Linden Avenue, the raised beds, the peonies that came back every June without fail. Perry made his first payment on time. He came on 2 Sundays and left early on both, once for a delivery issue at the store, once for something involving Tyler that he didn't explain. Archer was more reliable than Dinah had expected. On the days he couldn't make it, he called her 24 hours ahead and arranged for Britt to come instead. And Britt, as it turned out, was steadier than Archer. Alec drove down with Dinah on a Saturday in February. He brought Norman a pair of compression socks the doctor had mentioned, and a bag of Lorena's favorite oatcakes from the bakery near their house in Ottawa. On the drive back, after they had cleared the city and were on the highway, Alec said, "I heard Perry tell Archer that you'd probably end up covering everything yourself, because you wouldn't be able to watch your mom go without." Dinah kept her eyes on the road. "What did you say to them?" "I asked Perry what the store brought in last month. He didn't appreciate that." She looked at him sideways. "You didn't need to do that." "I know. A kilometer of highway went by. I thought you were being rigid with them. I kept thinking if you softened a little, the whole thing would smooth out. I didn't understand that they had already decided you'd be the one to pay, that it wasn't an accident." Dinah said nothing. He already understood it now. In March, Dinah arrived at the apartment on a Tuesday and found Lorena sitting up in bed with a round tin on her lap, the kind of tin that shortbread comes in at Christmas, with a tartan lid that had faded from handling. It was old. The red on one side had gone orange from years of sitting in the light. Lorena held it out to her. Dinah sat on the edge of the bed and took it. When she lifted the lid, the first thing she found was a page folded out of the Ottawa Citizen, dated 6 years back. The page had been carefully folded to show a photograph of Dinah standing in front of True North Framing Studio, holding a pair of scissors in front of a red ribbon. The caption had her name and the name of the shop. Under the newspaper page was one of the shop's business cards, white with dark green lettering, the old design from the first 2 years. Then a printed page that looked like it had come from a library kiosk, the print uneven, pulled from the shop's website. Then a short feature from a local arts magazine, 5 paragraphs, about independent frame shops in the city. Dinah's shop was mentioned in the 3rd paragraph. At the bottom of the tin was a yellow sticky note in Lorena's handwriting. Dinah's shop, Ottawa. Below that, a date, the date the shop had opened. "Where did you get all of this?" Dinah asked. Lorena worked at the sentence for a moment. Her speech had improved, but long constructions still broke apart midway. "Gail," she said finally. "She printed them for me." "Did you know about the opening? The day it happened?" Lorena nodded. "You never said anything, not once in 6 years." Lorena looked at the tin in Dinah's hands. Then she said one word at a time slowly, "Your father didn't go, so I couldn't say I knew about it." Dinah understood what she meant. Lorena had followed the shop from a distance, through Gail, because acknowledging it would have meant admitting that Dinah had built something. Norman had told her she didn't need to pursue. The tin was the most Lorena had been able to do with the pride she couldn't say out loud. "You could have told me," Dinah said, "even once." Lorena reached for her hand. Her grip was weak, the left hand always weaker since January, but she held on and didn't let go. "I was afraid," she said. It came out clearly, more clearly than most things she said lately, as though she had practiced it. Dinah didn't say that the fear had cost her. Lorena already knew that. Dinah sat with her mother's hand in hers, until Odette knocked to say that lunch was on the table. Lorena died in April on a quiet Tuesday morning before the sun was fully up. Archer had been there the night before and had stayed past his shift because she'd had trouble sleeping. He called Dinah just before 6. Norman had woken to find her and had called Archer before he called anyone else. By the time Dinah arrived, Archer and Norman were both sitting in the kitchen. Archer had put the kettle on and neither of them was drinking the tea. He looked up when Dinah came in. "She went in her sleep," he said. "She wasn't in any pain at the end." Dinah went into the bedroom. She stood beside the bed for a moment. She thought about what she had said in March, and what Lorena had managed to say back. It wasn't everything, but it was enough. The funeral was held at St. Andrew's in Brockville. The reception afterward was at the house on Linden Avenue, Perry's house now, in every legal sense, and the new showroom fixtures had been pushed to one side to make room for the folding tables. Dinah overheard 2 of Lorena's cousins near the coat rack. One of them said, what a shame it was that Lorena had spent her last months in a rented apartment. The other agreed, and said the daughter had a nice shop in Ottawa, but apparently hadn't found room for her own parents. She heard every word. She did not turn around. Archer appeared beside her a moment later. He had heard it too. "That's not what happened," he said, loud enough that the cousins stopped talking. "Dinah found the apartment. She hired the PSW. She organized every week of care for the last 4 months of Mom's life. If you're going to talk about what happened, that's what actually happened." One of the cousins murmured that they hadn't meant anything by it. Dinah put her hand on Archer's arm. "Leave it," she said. "They don't need to understand it. We know." Archer stood down. He had not come to things quickly or easily, but he had come to them. 7 weeks after the funeral, Gail called to tell Dinah that Perry's son Tyler had started taking over the ordering at Hartwell's Building Supply. He was moving the business to an online inventory system that Perry didn't know how to operate. Perry had come in 3 mornings in a row to find decisions already made without him. Dinah sat with that on the drive down to Brockville on a Saturday, not for a crisis, there was no crisis, just to check in on Norman. She thought about a man who had signed a house over to his son and then been moved out of his own bedroom 2 months later, and a man who was now showing up to his own store and finding his opinions had been decided around. She didn't say any of that out loud. Some things closed themselves. Norman was at the kitchen table with a mug of tea when she arrived, looking out the window at the parking lot. "How are you keeping?" she asked. "Getting by," he said. She sat across from him. The apartment was quiet in the way it had been since Lorena died, a different kind of quiet than before. After a while Norman said, without looking at her, I thought Perry would handle everything. The store, us. That's what I thought was going to happen. I know. I was wrong about some of it. He had never said that to her directly before. She didn't push him to say more. She had brought something in a cardboard tube. Fern's most recent school assignment, a design layout for a hypothetical shop interior that her teacher had posted on the school board's website as an example of student work. Dinah had printed a copy and framed it at True North in a simple maple frame with clean glass. She set it on the table in front of him. Norman picked it up and looked at it for a long time. He read the description Dinah had taped to the back, and Fern's name, and the name of the school. He turned it over and looked at the front again. "You're going to hang this in the shop?" "Front wall," Dinah said, "where the morning light hits." Norman was quiet. Then he reached out and tapped the frame once, with one finger gently. "Don't let it sit in a box somewhere," he said. "That's a waste." On Monday morning, before the shop opened, Dinah hung the frame on the front wall with a single nail. She stepped back to look at it. Fern's in small, careful letters at the bottom of the design. The morning light came in from the east-facing window and landed square on the glass. That afternoon, Fern came in after school and stopped in the doorway. "Mom, that's so embarrassing." "It's yours," Dinah said. "It doesn't have to be hidden." Fern looked at it for another moment, then shrugged in the way 12-year-olds shrug when they secretly don't mind, and went to the back counter to do her homework. Dinah locked the shop that evening and stood alone in the workroom for a moment before she left. The frame was still in her sightline. She thought about the shortbread tin with the tartan lid, and the newspaper clipping folded inside it, and the date on the sticky note written in her mother's handwriting. The tin was at home now, on the shelf in her bedroom. She had no plans to put it anywhere else. It wasn't something to display. It was something to carry with her quietly. The proof that she had built something real from very little, and that her mother had known it all along and kept the evidence for 6 years in a tin because she hadn't known how to say so. The past didn't feel lighter just because you understood it. The money taken when she was 20 years old was still gone. The certificate she hadn't been able to finish was still unfinished. The things she had lost couldn't be handed back just because someone finally admitted to them. But something had shifted, and she knew where it was. She turned off the workroom light and picked up her keys. Through the front window, she could see Alex's car idling at the curb. Fern had her face pressed to the side window, watching for her. Dinah had never gotten the diploma, or a share of the house on Linden Avenue, or a conversation from Norman that came close to covering what it should have. She wasn't going to get those things. The last year had never been about getting them back. What she had held on to was the only thing she had refused to give away. The right to decide how much she would carry, where she would stop, and what her daughter would grow up watching her do. She walked out, locked the door behind her, and got into the car.